Alright, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Behind the Grind. So, in today's video, we're going to be ranking all of the Tyranid Bioforms currently present in Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. Specifically, we're going to be ranking them from worst to best. However, just be wary that we are only ranking the Tyranids that appear in PvE. So, that goes for all Tyranids that are in operations and in siege mode. So, you won't see anything like the Ripper Swarm or the Gargoyles present on this list. So, without further ado, let's just go ahead and start with the worst Tyranid in my opinion. And in number 16, we're going to go with the Tyranid Warrior with the Lash Whip. Now, this is my least favorite Tyranid enemy in this entire game, man. These enemies are so annoying to fight for me personally because I cannot get down their parryable attacks for the life of me. To me personally, they just don't make sense, and every time they come out lashing with these crazy whips, dude, I can never telegraph it properly, and the range on these things is also insane to me. So it's not even like you're trying to rush in to get within melee range in order to try to kill one of these things, because they're just slapping at you from friggin' farther than you would think. So is it a melee enemy? Is it a ranged enemy? It's a little bit of both, and for me personally, it just doesn't work. Going into the number 15 spot, we're going to go with the Hierophant Bio-Titan. Now, this is the most disappointing enemy for me personally in the game. So, the Hierophant Bio-Titan was added right after the game came out with the release of the operation called Termination, and you basically cannot fight this thing. So the way to kill the Bio-Titan is that you charge up the actual last cannons and you basically point a laser designator at it and you just deal damage to it. So not only do you not actually get to fight it, but you have to use some kind of gimmick in order to kill it. So it's just pretty bad to me personally. It has these ranged attacks that really excel in area denial. So like it'll shoot these giant spores out at you and it'll prevent you from being able to go in those specific areas, which to me personally, it just, once again, it just does not work, man. I do not care for this boss. This attack is extremely annoying when you're trying to kill it, and it's the only thing that it really can do to you, since it really can't go up close and stomp you with its feet or whatever. It has to shoot these annoying ass spores at you. So that's it for the Hierophant Bio-Titan. Moving up to number 14, we have the Biovore and the Spore Mines. Now, I do kind of see what they were trying to go for with this enemy, but in execution, it just doesn't work. So the Biovore is already a pretty heavily armored enemy, and what it does is that it runs away at an extremely fast pace, knocking everybody down at the same time, and then it'll go and hunker down from far away, and it'll shoot Spore Mines at you. Eventually, if you get close to it, it will start to attack you in melee. But once again, same with the Tyranid Warrior with the Lash Whip. Its attacks are pretty hard to telegraph. And I don't necessarily know when I need to parry when it comes to this thing. Every time I seem to mess it up, and you know, that's probably a skill issue to me personally. But this is my list and this is my experience fighting these enemies. So the Biovore, I just don't really care for it. I don't like how it hunkers down and you essentially can't damage it. You try your best to try to get damage onto it when it's like hunkered down like a freaking armadillo or whatever, and it just doesn't work, especially not in a game like this that really requires you to be kind of parrying attacks, attacking 24/7. It doesn't work when the game slows down the combat and it forces you to kind of thwart these out, in my opinion. Next up, at number 13, we have the Tyranid Warrior with the Venom Cannon. So this is the Tyranid Warrior that'll sit back at the edge of the map and will shoot you with this goddamn sniper. And, you know, this enemy could be a lot worse. I have a feeling that when the game first came out, this enemy was a lot worse than what it is currently. And essentially what this thing will do is that it'll charge up its Venom Cannon and you can see the green laser from a mile away. But when it shoots you, you get completely knocked back down. Now, this isn't a problem when he's by himself. When there's only one Tyranid Warrior with the sniper, it's really not that bad. But when you get a pack of them with all these Venom Cannons, this is when it becomes an issue. Because if you get knocked down by one of these guys and you immediately try to stand up due to the animation just making you stand up after getting knocked down by the Venom Cannon shot, and another Tyranid Warrior with the Venom Cannon already has a shot lined up, you're just going to get stun locked into oblivion. You get shot, knocked down, and as you're standing up, you get shot again, and it's just an endless cycle of killing and dying. So, yeah, that's why I placed the Tyranid Warrior with the Venom Cannon at number 13. It's not the worst enemy on its own, but it's when it's in a pack that it's insufferable to fight against. Next up at number 12, we have the Tyranid Warrior with the Devourer. Now, the Tyranid Warrior with the Devourer is that one basic Tyranid Warrior that'll essentially fight with you at range. It has the Devourer, which is that weapon that spits out all these little meanies that come at you, these little green things. And once again, this enemy isn't too annoying on its own. The problem is when you get a bunch of them and you just get an endless hail of little Devourer bites coming at you, and it's pretty hard to dodge. There's not much you can do when it comes to ranged attacks in this game other than dodge. This should be called Dodge Marine 2 because like I said, there's no way to counteract this. You get an endless hail of Devourer shots coming at you, and you can either A, take it and get downed, or you can B, dodge out of the way and, not get down. So what are you really supposed to do with an enemy at range like this when you don't really have any capabilities for cover or to counteract this specific weapon? So that's why I place the Tyranid Warrior with the Devourer at the number 12 spot. Moving on to the number 11 spot. Now, this is where things get interesting. These are all some of my favorite Tyranids. Now, just because I place something lower on the list doesn't mean that it's essentially bad. I already got all of the enemies that personally annoy me out of the way. So any enemy from here on out is one of my favorite Tyranid enemies. And with number 11, we have Termagants. Termagants are your essential swarm enemy. They'll come in these large groups and they'll essentially post up farther away from the actual swarm. And just like the Tyranid Warriors with the Venom cannons, they'll shoot at you from a distance and you'll just get their hail of weaponry, but they're not as annoying to deal with as the Tyranid Warriors with the Venom cannons or the Devourers. Just throw a grenade at them or shoot them in the head, and that'll pretty much be it. That's the way to deal with these guys. So they're not the best enemy, they're not the worst enemy, they're just kind of in between, and that's why I place the Termagants at the number 11 spot. Coming in at the number 10 spot, we have the Carnifex. Now, when it comes to the Tyranid bosses, the Carnifex is my second least favorite along with the Hierophant Bio-Titan. And the reason for this is because, once again, I don't know if this is a skill issue or it's just the way that the enemy is telegraphed. I can never understand what this guy is doing. Every time I do a dodge or I do a parry, I feel like I got it out of sheer luck because my timing with all the other enemies are pretty damn good, especially with Scarable Cult Terminators, which I'll get into when we talk about the Thousand Suns ranked video that I'll be having up on the channel soon. But going back to the Carnifex, I just don't know when I need to parry, and I personally believe that's the way that the enemy is kind of telegraphed. You just can't really tell with this thing. It'll kind of swoop around in a circle and try to knock you with its tail, but the animation kind of makes you think that it's coming at you with its arm claws, and once again, it's just very strange to me personally. And the worst part about this boss is kind of when he hunkers down, and just like the Tyranid Warrior with the Devourer, he'll hunker down and shoot at you all these little green nasties that'll come flying at you. And once again, Dodge Marine 2, the only thing you can do is just dodge. You can't block these things, you can't take cover behind something, so you just gotta dodge. And sometimes the hitboxes when it comes to these things that you have to dodge are wonky and they're all over the place, man. I know that everybody here watching this video has had a strange interaction fighting the Carnifex, and you feel like you dodged out of the way just in time only to get hit by an actual projectile. So that's why the Carnifex is at the number 10 spot. Moving on to the number 9 spot, we have the Tyranid Warrior with the Barbed Strangler. Now, this is one of my favorite Tyranid Warriors for me personally because of the way that they deny you areas. So what they'll do is they'll stand at a distance once again, and they'll shoot these little spores into the ground that essentially act as barriers. Now, you can get these out of the way very easily just by shooting the little spore that dug itself into the ground. However, if you're in the heat of combat, you're not necessarily going to be focusing on this because you will be fighting other Tyranids all the while. So it can get pretty annoying if you get a bunch of these things all around you, and it'll blur your vision, and it can really mess you up and down you extremely fast if you're not prioritizing these projectiles. But that's pretty much all I got to say about the Tyranid Warrior with the Barbed Strangler. A good enemy all around, fun to fight, fun to kill. It is what it is. That's it for the number 9 spot. But moving on to the number 8 spot, we have the Ravener. Now, the Ravener is quite the interesting enemy because it is a melee focused enemy. However, the way that it fights is that, hey, it could come at anybody at a time. So it'll burrow from the ground, it'll come up, it'll emerge, it'll attack real quick, then it'll go back into the ground. And it's essentially like a little guessing game. You kind of got to guess where he's going next. You can look at the ground and kind of see where he's headed to, but the way to fight this enemy is that you just kind of got to slow down and hold your position and just fight them off until you can get rid of all of these nasty things. Especially on Absolute, when like 3 of these guys can appear, it can be a real pain in the ass. But if you guys are just kind of holding your ground and prioritizing these dudes, that you should take care of them pretty quickly, and they will not prove to be that big of a pain in the ass. Speaking of pain in the ass, next up we got the number 7 spot, which is the Lictor. And once again, same with Raveners. On Absolute, these guys are quite the annoyance, man. But individually, they're pretty fun to fight because once again, they force players to kind of stop and focus on them in order to continue their operation. So they will strike from the shadows. They have this invisibility cloak, and you essentially kind of hold your ground and they'll come at you and you can parry them real quick, or if you miss the parry, then they'll be on top of you, swiping at you and taking away all of your health. So Lictors are a big danger to uncoordinated teams. You just got to focus on these guys, take them out real quick. They're fun to fight. Me personally, they're a pretty cool melee enemy. Some of their animations can be a little wonky to predict at times. Sometimes I do find myself parrying when I'm not supposed to, whether it's too early or just a little too late. I don't really anticipate it properly, but that one I can admit is a skill issue because the animations are pretty clear when it comes to the Lictor. It's a great melee enemy, and I can't wait to see the next melee enemy that comes into the game, which is the Chaos Spawn, coming soon with patch 10.0. So I'm pretty excited to see that. I always like my melee enemies, and the Lictor is a good all-around melee enemy. Moving on to the number 6 spot, we have the basic enemy infantry, which is the Hormagaunts. Now, I have nothing bad to say about Hormagaunts. I don't have nothing particularly amazing to say about them either. They're just right in between. They're your basic swarm enemy. They're fun to smack around all the time. They're fun to catch midair as they're trying to jump onto you. They're fun to just destroy with your chainsword or gun down in an endless hail of bolter fire. Or if you're just smacking them all around with the Thunderhammer. Hormagaunts prove to be a pretty interesting enemy, and even if they're just filler enemies to kind of keep the action going, they're a great enemy. Their design is awesome. I love to fight them in Space Marine 2, and I just don't have anything bad to say about these guys. Moving into our top 5 now, though, we have the Zoanthrope. So the Zoanthrope is the flying enemy psyker that flies around with another Zoanthrope. So you will always get pairs of 2s when it comes to these guys, and you know, they're pretty interesting to fight. So one of them at a given time will have a shield, so you always got to prioritize the one without a shield. But with a lot of ranged attacks, including the beam and the projectiles that they will shoot out at the players, these guys can prove to be a problem. So once again, basically like any other large enemy in the Tyranid roster, you have to prioritize these guys whenever you do see them. Go ahead and gun down the one without a shield, and then go ahead and kill the last one in order to achieve victory. But that's pretty much all I got to say for Zoanthropes. Moving on to the number 4 spot, however, we have Neurothropes. Now, Neurothropes are one of my favorite enemies in this game. Not only are their designs extremely cool, but the way that you fight them is also pretty interesting. So, even if these guys are a nightmare for melee-oriented classes to fight, is eventually they will kind of hunker down on the ground, and they will start this chain of attacks that involves a huge area of effect, just kind of like the Hive Tyrant. We'll bring that up later once we get to the Hive Tyrant, but you kind of have to dodge through their little waves that they do. Some ranged attacks that he also does is that he'll be flying in the air and he'll create these little rings around the arena that you kind of have to dodge away from in order to stay alive. So the Neurothropes can be a big danger. Once again, just focus on them, take them out. Don't worry about the smaller enemies, and just continue on with what you're doing as soon as the Neurothrope is taken care of. Moving on to the top 3. At the number 3 spot, we're going to have the Trigon Prime, which is the most recent Tyranid added to Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. and this enemy does not disappoint. So this enemy is a boss fight in the most recent operation we got within the game called Exfiltration. Now, this enemy essentially stalks you out throughout the entire map, and the way that you fight him is that, once again, just kind of like Raveners, he will emerge from the ground. However, once the Trigon Prime emerges from the ground, he will open up an actual tunnel that Tyranids will come crawling out of. So the way that you combat this is by dropping a Melt-A-Bomb into those tunnels and focusing on the Trigon Prime. You can also knock him down with the use of said Melt-A-Bombs. So you actually want to be focusing on these Melt-A-Bombs while you're fighting this guy, because they can prove to be a huge advantage if you are using them right. You kind of got to time them right. You got to put them in the right position. But the Trigon Prime, once again, a really cool boss. He's really easy to dodge as well, so you will be landing those gun strikes pretty often. And what can I say? He's a cool boss. He's a pretty scary looking boss too. He's pretty big, but he just plays great. He looks great. So he is great. And that's why I put the Trigon Prime at the number 3 spot. But at the number 2 spot, we have the Hive Tyrant. Now, the Hive Tyrant is the last enemy encountered in the Operation Decapitation. Now, this enemy serves as the final boss of that specific operation, and the whole operation is dedicated to hunting this guy down. After wounding him, eventually you find him in his boss arena, and this is a great boss fight, man. So he shares a lot of attacks, kind of similar to the Neurothrope, in which he will sometimes hunker down and launch out a wave area of effect attack that you kind of have to dodge through in order to evade. So that one is pretty interesting, but he also uses some of the Carnifex attacks, in which he will come at you real close and start swiping at you, and he can prove easy to dodge. He can prove easy to parry. Sometimes, for me personally, it's kind of hit or miss, but the whole spectacle of fighting the Hive Tyrant is pretty awesome, and this is why I put him in the number 2 spot. He is one of my favorite Tyranid enemies, and he is my favorite Tyranid bosses. So nothing particularly bad to say about the Hive Tyrant. He's a great boss all around, and that's why he goes in the number 2 spot. And finally, coming at the number 1 spot, the best enemy for me personally amongst the Tyranids in Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2, the essential equal to the Adeptus Astartes, in my opinion, is the Tyranid Warrior with the Bone Sword. So these guys will come flooding in, and you'll just see them because they have their swords crossed in front of their face, which prevents you from essentially causing range damage to them. So you're forced to fight them in hand-to-hand combat. And what can I say, man? These guys are awesome. They're fun to parry. You can smack the shit out of them, gun strike them, execute them. It's great. But they are extremely annoying when there's more than one. These are the enemies that cause the most amount of stun locks in this game. So even if they have such a big negative individually or even in small pairs, these enemies are great. But you add anything more than 3 Tyranid Warriors with Bone Swords at a time, and you're in for a really bad experience. So just know that little disclaimer as I'm praising this specific enemy, that even if it is my favorite enemy in Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2, they do suffer from just being endless stun locks, and they are extremely annoying to fight in large groups. But that's pretty much all I got for today, man. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like and subscribe if you are not already. Also, if you wish to support the channel further, I'd encourage you to join the channel membership for exclusive perks. I'm so grateful for all the members, and your generosity is extremely appreciated. Thanks. This has been Behind the Grind, ranking all of the Tyranid enemies from worst to best in Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace!